Let me ask you a question. Have you noticed that a company can run smoothly at 20 people, but the moment it grows to 80, it grows to 120, it grows to 300, everything starts breaking. Decisions slow down, meetings multiply, priorities collide, and suddenly the leadership is asking the same question: why is execution getting harder as we grow? Here is the uncomfortable truth. Scaling doesn't grow your company. It doesn't. Scaling multiplies your confusion. And if you don't understand why, scaling will quietly destroy execution. But today, I'm going to show you something most leaders never see. Because the real reason scaling breaks execution is not what you think. It is not. A few years ago, I worked with a founder who had built an incredible organization, wonderful company. The team grew from 12 people to 140 employees in 3 years. And that was good growth. The revenue was rising, customers were increasing, investors were excited. From the outside, it looked like success. But inside the organization, things were not that good. Execution was collapsing. Projects stalled. Teams blamed each other. And the leaders complained about lack of accountability. The founder said something I hear all the time: we just need better people. We already have good people. But when we looked deeper, the problem wasn't talent. The problem was scale without alignment. Scaling without alignment. And once you understand this principle, you never look at scaling the same way. You never look at scaling the same way. But you need to first of all understand this principle. Here is the hidden law every growing organization eventually discovers. The systems that worked at 20 people break at 100. The systems that work at 100 people break at 300. Why? Because scale introduces 3 invisible forces that destroy execution. Number 1, decision distance. Number 2, priority distortion. Number 3, accountability diffusion. Now, those may sound like technical terms, but they're actually very simple. Very simple indeed. And once you see them, you start recognizing them everywhere in your organization. Everywhere, you'll be able to spot them almost instantly. And think about the Fast and Furious movies. In the first movie, the team is small, quite small. Everyone knows each other. Decisions are instant. But imagine if the crew suddenly became 300 drivers. 100 drivers. This means you wouldn't have street racing anymore. No, instead you'll have traffic. So what does this mean? It means more people means more coordination. And more coordination means slower execution. The bigger the team becomes, the harder it becomes to move fast. The harder it becomes to move fast. Unless something changes. The first reason killing execution is decision distance. Let me repeat. The first reason scaling breaks execution is decision distance. When organizations are small, decisions happen instantly. A founder walks across the room and says, "Let's do this." Done. But as organizations scale, decisions begin traveling through layers. As organizations scale, decisions begin traveling through layers. It's the manager, the director, the vice president, the executive team. Now, something more fascinating happens. The decision gets slower and weaker. Every step, the decision travels. It's like the childhood game of telephone. Remember the one who used to use the match boxes? By the time the message reaches the last person, it barely resembles the original idea. Scaling doesn't just increase headcount, it increases distance between decisions and execution. And distance slows everything down. It does. Distance slows everything down. The line now is longer. The layers are more. The second problem scaling introduces is priority distortion. When teams are small, everyone knows the mission. The mission is very clear to everyone in the team. Everyone feels the urgency. But when companies grow, departments emerge. Marketing has its priorities. Operations has its priorities. Finance has its priorities. Each team is optimizing for their success. But the organization loses shared direction. Yeah, everybody is pulling on their side. It's like an orchestra where every musician plays perfectly, but everyone is following a different sheet of music. Technically skilled, they are all technically skilled, but strategically misaligned. And the result is noise instead of execution. The third execution killer is accountability diffusion. In small teams, ownership is obvious. Everyone knows who owns the outcome. But as organizations scale, responsibility spreads. Committees form, cross-functional teams appear, and something dangerous happens. Something dangerous happens. Ownership becomes collective. And collective ownership often means no ownership at all. You start hearing phrases like, "We thought someone else was doing this. We thought so and so was handling this." That is not a people problem. It is a structural clarity. It's a structural clarity problem, not a people problem. So how do we handle this? All of these three problems point to a deeper issue. Yes, something I call organizational cognitive misalignment. Organizational cognitive misalignment. As companies grow, leaders assume everyone interprets the strategy the same way. But they don't. They don't. Teams develop different mental models of, first, one, what matters, two, who decides, three, who owns results. And when these mental models drift apart, execution breaks. Yes, execution breaks. Not because people don't care. People care about the organization, they care a lot about what is happening. But because people are operating with different maps. Yeah, they are all mapped to different things. So definitely the execution will not work. It will not. This is exactly why I developed the organizational cognitive alignment model. The organizational cognitive alignment model, because scaling organizations don't fail due to lack of strategy. No. They fail because the thinking across the organization becomes fragmented. Yes. The thinking across the organization becomes fragmented. The model focuses on aligning three critical systems in the organization. One, decision clarity. This is where we ask ourselves, who decides what? First, organizations make this obvious. They do. Second, priority clarity. What matters most right now? Execution improves when leaders reduce competing priorities. It helps a lot when people can focus on what matters right now. Three, accountability clarity. This is where we ask, who owns the outcome? Not the task, the outcome. When these three things align, scale stops creating confusion. Yeah. And execution begins accelerating again. Scale stops creating confusion and execution begins accelerating again. Here is the leadership insight that surprises most founders. Scaling doesn't break execution because the organization gets bigger. No. It breaks execution because clarity doesn't scale automatically. Clarity must be designed. Clarity must be designed. Clarity must be maintained. Clarity must be reinforced. The organizations that scale successfully don't just grow headcount. No. They grow alignment. Organizations that scale successfully don't just grow headcount. They grow alignment. That founder I mentioned earlier is realized that once the leadership team aligned decisions right, priorities and accountability, something remarkable happened. Meetings became shorter, projects moved faster, and execution began accelerating again. Not because the strategy changed, they were still holding on to their strategy, but because everyone started thinking in the same direction. Yeah. Not because the strategy changed, but everybody started thinking in the same direction. They were working and working together as the various departments, as the various teams. So remember this, scaling doesn't break execution. Misalignment does. Scaling doesn't break execution, misalignment does. The organizations that scale successfully aren't the ones with the best strategy. They are the ones where everyone shares the same understanding of the following items. 1, what matters? 2, who decides? 3, who owns the results? What matters? Who decides? Who owns the results? If this idea challenged how you think about scaling, subscribe to the channel, because in the next video, I'm going to review something most leadership teams get completely wrong. Yes. And this is why accountability systems often make execution worse, not better. And once you see it, you'll never run your organization the same way again. Once you see it, you'll never run your organization the same again.